Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Apaino Virakatara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmaitayataravo Binedus Tam Sarvabhutam Hridayam Munimanatasmi. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudhirayet Abhaktya Vihina Padaralakshay Kiptastakamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Papanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam Tave vasmi najiva me tvaya vina iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayanam charanandike vancha kapatrubhascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So we are going to begin by offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasto Tarasat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada and Sri Guru Pada Padma Nityalita Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasto Tarasat Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, under our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga, and all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So today, as it's disappearance day of three extraordinary Vaishnavas, Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, the guru in our line, connected with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, not by Diksha, he did not give him initiation, but he was his principal Shiksha Guru. You may remember when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he traveled throughout India. He was placed in so many different places as a magistrate, and he spent some time in the Mathura, Vrindavan Mathura area. And there he first met Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj near, I believe, Surya Kund, and took significant instruction from him. And then later, when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur came to retirement age and went to Godrum for his further writing and deep bhajan, Jagannath Das Babaji was also inclined to come. It was when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of the reasons that he came back, his initial intention was to retire and go to Vrindavan. But on the way, he stopped at a famous temple of Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva told him, no, you have to go back to Godrum. There is something you have to do. You have to discover the birthplace of Mahaprabhu and reveal the pastime places in the greater Navadvipa area of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. Very similar to the order that Mahaprabhu gave to the 6 Goswamis to discover the forgotten and lost pastime places, right? That's one. To write granthas, literatures, revealing the philosophy taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and to set an example of perfect behavior and example, right? Sadachar. And he did this in an extraordinary way, and for this reason he's known as the 7th Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur did the same things in Navadvipa. And revived and commented and explained the writings of the Goswamis, and also wrote many books of his own, including extraordinary books like Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Sri Jaiva Dharma, and commentaries, and commentary on this Brahma Samhita, which we've been reading the last few days, explaining the tattva, the glories of Lord Shiva. So it was when he had decided, when he had finally discovered what he believed to be the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, he requested Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj to confirm this. And Babaji Maharaj had been inspired to come to Navadvip for his last days. By this time, he was about 144 years old. And he was carried in a basket by his servant. Very strong, can't remember his name, very strong, powerful servant, carry him everywhere. And he was so old that the skin on his eyes fell down over his eyes, and he couldn't even see without lifting that skin up. So he looked quite infirm. But when he was brought to the place, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a ceremony, and many dignitaries and personalities were brought to that spot that we now know as the Yog Pit. When Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj arrived there, his servant put the basket down, and even though by this time he was 144 and apparently infirm, he climbed out of the basket and began to leap and dance in the air, very high, in ecstasy for a considerable time. And everybody was astonished, and he was saying, "Oh, this is the place of my Prabhu. This is the birthplace of my Prabhu," and he was in exalted state of transcendental ecstasy. And he spent his remaining days in Navadvip, sometimes going to Godrum at the meeting place of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was living there, and then also Swananda Sukhada Kunj, where he would host gatherings, for discussion, Ishtagoshti, you could say, philosophical discussions, and they would be attended by himself, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he was still Bimala Prasad, and other exalted persons. We get the sense of what those were like when we read Jaiva Dharma, because there are many similar kinds of meetings spoken about in that literature as well. And he was a completely internally absorbed transcendentalist. When his servants would give him his food, his prasad, there's a famous story that there were some puppies that would come, and he would feed them. He would feed the puppies from his own plate. In India, dogs, well, now in the cities they keep them, but this is a recent thing. They used to be, just kind of on the outskirts, right? Taking whatever scraps or garbage were lying around and doing some service by protecting the village and all, but they were not considered pets and quite dirty. But he would feed these puppies, and when his servants tried to hide the puppies so as not to, what they considered, contaminate and disturb the meal, he would refuse to eat until the puppies were brought. And he would say, "These are the real Dhamvasis." They had that vision, even the animals. And so a greatly exalted personality. When the last time I was in Vrindavan, actually, on this day, in fact, I went with one devotee who had come from Bangalore and then went to Vrindavan and joined, and then took sannyas as a young man. His name's Giri Maharaj now. It used to be named Govardhan. And he knows everywhere. He spent the last 10 years combing Vrindavan, walking the streets, going to all the forest, all the temples. And he took me to a small temple um, that was run by the descendants of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. You wouldn't even know hardly it's a temple. It's one of the myriad temples in Vrindavan that were really just a very small little temple area and a small little living area next to it. But they would, have artiks and bhajans every day, and we went one day, and on this day, and in the evening, and bhajans were going on, and they had one sadhu that would stay there, and because it was this special day, they had brought out something they never usually bring out, which was the walking stick and water pot of Jagannath Das Babaji. And the water pot was made out of a gourd. It was old, it was dried, it was blackened, it was about this wide, that high, with a handle cut into it, one piece. And the stick was just an old bent stick with a little rounded top. Again, small, very old, darkened, but this is paraphernalia of this great transcendental personality. And so we were allowed to hold them and touch them and put them to our head. And we gave a donation, and the sadhu there made sure that we got some special care and special remnants. So it's a very wonderful time. And we stayed and did some bhajan. Oh, and we saw the deities of Jagannath Das Babaji. He had one set of deities he had. I believe one set was stolen. And so he didn't want to get another set, but he did. And those deities were left and were still being worshipped today. So this is his disappearance day. The teacher of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Oh, there's one other story, famous story. There's actually a lot of stories, but we have a lot to cover, and we want to honor him. That many people would come to Vrindavan to take shelter of this exalted Babaji, and they would give up their homes, leave their farms, whatever it was, and they would come and take shelter of him. And of course, in Vrindavan, there were many persons who were known by the title Babaji, who, if you came and took shelter and give them some money and then stayed and served them, they would give you mantras which they proclaimed to be Siddha Pranali, give you your spiritual name, your perfected form name, right? And internal identity and meditation. But they would give it indiscriminately to anyone who could pay the fee. And so there are many persons like that, but Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, he did not do that. When people came to him, and he was the most famous of the Babajis there, so many people came to him, and he would tell them, maintain a small plot and grow eggplants and other vegetables and flowers and offer them to the deity at this temple. And they would do that, but it was very frustrating for them because they saw all these other people that were given Siddha Pranali and were chanting their mantras at Radha Kund and things like that. And they appealed to him and said, no, you do this. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur came and he spent some time with Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and he was recognized as a very advanced soul, even as a magistrate. He had the qualities, the learning, everything, and he was very intimate with Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. And so these disciples asked him, please go to Babaji Maharaj and ask him, that we've come here, we gave up our farms and our gardening and all that to do bhajan in Vrindavan. And now he has us doing the same thing, growing eggplants. Please ask him to give us Siddha Pranali. And they thought that Bhaktivinoda Thakur could intervene on their behalf. But, to their surprise, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, no, what your Guru Maharaj has given you, this instruction, is appropriate for your adhikar, for your eligibility. You don't have the qualification to do this kind of bhajan. And these others, this is all cheating. However, if you engage your energies in this growing of vegetables and flowers and offering to the deity in Vrindavan, you will gain great, great sukriti. And if you go on doing that along with your chanting, then you will become eligible. But this is the step. He's given you this. And they were a little unhappy, but they accepted the words of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Right? So, anyway, this is the disappearance day of Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Also, Rasikananda Prabhu. I didn't have time to look up anything about him. I do know, though, that Baladev Vidyabhushan Prabhu, the most famous disciple of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, comes in the line of Rasikananda Prabhu. That his guru, I think Damodar, was in the line of Rasikananda. Rasikananda, associate of Mahaprabhu. And so Baladev Vidyabhushan had been a great scholar in the philosophies of the different sampradayas, exalted, very learned Brahmin family, and he himself had great qualities of learning from a very young age. But then after becoming adept in the philosophies of the four sampradayas, he, and I think, did he come from the Madhva or the Sri? Didn't have time to look this up and give an adequate explanation. But when he met this devotee who was to become his guru, he was so astonished by the depth of his learning and the broad, all-encompassing conceptions of Mahaprabhu, the Sachinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, which reconciled all the limitations of the other four conceptions of the other sampradayas. They're correct, but they're not complete. Nor do they give one access ultimately to the highest aspiration to be in Goloka Vrindavan, in Braj Leela, and understanding Gopi Bhav in its highest way. So Rasikananda Prabhu is the Param Guru of Baladev Vidyabhushan, who later took Shiksha from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Maybe Paramaprashti Guru, I don't know if he's great-grandfather or grandfather, but at any rate, associate of Mahaprabhu. Oh, no, it had to be before that, because this goes way back. Anyway, forgive my inadequacies on this. And also, let's see, who else? Rasikananda, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Oh, Srimad Bhakti Dayita Maharaj. Ooh, great disciple of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The guru of Bhaktivigyan Bharati Maharaj, Bhakti Balabhatirtha Maharaj. He joined very early Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada's mission, was served as brahmachari for a long time. His name was Hayagriva Brahmachari. Many, many stories about him. And his capacity for service and his expertise in all ways was recognized by his Guru Maharaj, by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, who said that he has volcanic energy in service. And his godbrothers recognized this and gave him so much honor for that. Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj tells a story about how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada wanted to acquire land on the Godavari River at the place where Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy met. They wanted to establish a Gaudiya Math there because it's such an important place, right? And so Hayagriva and I'm not sure if Sri Navadwipa was a sannyasi yet, I don't know. But they both went there and they spent considerable time there. And they had no money and it was very difficult for them. And they didn't seem to be making any headway. In many places in India, especially these holy places, there's always what we nowadays call land mafia. Local people who have strong control over all the buying and selling of land. And even if you buy it, they may take it back from you. Anyway, they were up against that. And try as they might, they could make no progress in acquiring the land. And they had spent so much time there, and Sri Maharaj recounts how he suggested that to Bhaktivedanta Maharaj that they've tried, they put their best effort in. It doesn't seem like this is the will of the Lord at this time. And so he wanted to leave. And I'm not sure whether he left. I think he had to leave and do other seva. But Bhaktivedanta Maharaj stayed and ultimately acquired that land and oversaw and saw to the construction of the math. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, at the point where everyone else is ending their service, where they can no longer serve, at that point, that's where Bhaktivedanta Maharaj begins, right? He will not be vanquished in any way. so many extraordinary services. When we were in Bangalore, we went to Hyderabad and we visited one of his temples there. I think it was established in 1954. Beautiful temple. And Hyderabad is not a very attractive city. The name itself is a Muslim name. It's all Muslim. It was all taken over. And their temple, I don't know what kind of area it was when they first moved in, but when we were visiting, it was just surrounded. It was a whole Muslim enclave. But it's very beautiful, built out of granite block, that gray stone, very nicely done. And they had nice prasadam hall, nice kitchen, nice living quarters, and also a small goshala. Everything was there, and one very nice sannyasi disciple of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. We were there for the, I can't remember whether, I think it was the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. Yeah, it was, and he received us very nicely, very humble, very pleasant, and beautifully run, very clean, even though, they didn't have too many followers in that area, in that city, but they maintained it nicely. And he had mats many places throughout India. It's a misconception to think that the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, none of them were doing preaching. Many of them just settled down into whatever temple that they were able to inherit. But personalities like Bhaktivedanta Maharaj were very energetic during the time of Saraswati Prabhupada and after as well. In fact, he was very expert in acquiring land, and he was also very expert in developing relationships everywhere. And he had strong connections in Navadwipa. And our Srila Prabhupada had tried for a long time to get land there, but the local communist government was checking it, agitating the farmers, preventing the sale, right? And Bhakti Rakshat Sridharaj, he lived across the way. Our Prabhupada's original intention was to get land on that side, on the Koladweep side, that present-day Navadweep is. But Srila Sridharaj said, no, if you do that, because when you establish your temple, everything's going to be big. and then everybody will think that this is where Mahaprabhu took birth, because there was that argument, because the Ganges had shifted and old Navadvipa had been washed away, and so new Navadvipa was on the other side of the river, and so many people thought that Mahaprabhu appeared there. But of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had established the proper place, but still there was some argument. So Srila Prabhupada was convinced, but he could not get the land. So finally, Srila Sridhar Maharaj requested Bhaktivedanta Maharaj to help him, right? You have so many connections and contacts, and you're very good at this. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was a little miffed still, this transcendental argument, because our Srila Prabhupada was critical of the bulk of Gaudiya Math. He had been, since he had retired, and was living in Vrindavan since the early 50s, and sometimes visiting in Navadvipa with Bhaktivedanta Keshav Raj, writing articles, and he critical and saying, oh, they're, and then when he went to the West, telling his disciples, oh, they're just ringing bells, that our mission is a preaching mission. Because Srila Prabhupada was disappointed that there was not more cooperation between them and him. Although when you read the book, My Beloved Masters, you read about the way that the preaching Gaudiya Math devotees did cooperate with each other. But time wasn't right that things would cooperate on a very broad level. And each of these acharyas, they had their own missions. They had their own inspiration. And by Krishna's plan, Mahaprabhu's plan, they were developing separately. And this is like Mahaprabhu's mission. Mahaprabhu, he didn't have just the tree trunk. The tree of Mahaprabhu has thousands and thousands of branches. This is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And nowhere is it said that, where it criticizes any one branch. They all have their speciality. They all have their purpose in the broader mission. And even Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, has said that it's still going to take a few generations more before all of the different branches of Mahaprabhu's movement, including ISKCON, learns how to work conjointly and cooperate. For now, it's appropriate that the different missions develop individually and express like that. So, he established many mats, but when Srila Sridhar Maharaj asked him help to get land for Swami Maharaj, or Srila Prabhupada, he said, but he says that we're just ringing bells. He was annoyed. Right? God brothers argue. Chandravali and Radhika criticize each other about their different moods of service. That will be there. But they're on a very different plane, and it says in Chaitanya Bhagavat, if you see two great Vaishnavas arguing about anything, and you take the side of one and then criticize the other, you are doomed, right? Because their arguments and their disagreements are on a level that we are not. And we impose our own mundane conceptions and mundane propensities for fault-finding and criticism, and thus can fall into the realm of aparad. So we may favor one devotee over another, but never criticize. We may find shelter under this one, but don't criticize that one. So he said, but he says we're just ringing bells. Why should I help, right? And so Sridhar Maharaj said, oh, but to ring the bell in Swamiji's worldwide kirtan, how glorious. And the heart of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was deeply attached to the service and mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And when Srila Sridhar Maharaj talked about the glory, the emerging worldwide Sankirtan movement, he softened and, all right, I'll help. And very quickly, the land was acquired. And, not everybody knows this, but they did cooperate together very nicely at times, Um, so, uh, and he was very strict in his mats. Uh, very, like carrying on the traditions of Saraswati Prabhupada, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, when he established his mats, he had to cut so many jungles of Mayavad and Prakrita Sahaja, right? And so he's very strict about what he would teach to the general devotees about the intimate affairs of Radha and Krishna, even though he brought those to light, and in many of their, when they did the big parikrama in Navadwipa, he instructed Bhakti Hriday Maharaj to create the dioramas about Rasa Leela and everything, but very careful descriptions. At Radha Kund, he also gave very incredible description. But in the mat, he is very cautious with his brahmacharis, and even some songs that we sing every day, he would not allow them to sing because he said there's too much intimate rasa within this song. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, I've been told by Vaishnavas that he would not even have pictures of Radhika and the gopis and everyone in his mat, because his brahmacharis, he didn't want them to, in their conditioned state, to come wrongly afflicted by that. Didn't feel they were eligible. And Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, he was his successor Acharya, he also was like that. When our Shamarani, Jadharani, went after the disappearance of our Srila Gurudev to get some advice on painting, the Krishna Leela paintings that she'd been instructed to do, he said, "Oh, I'm not qualified for that. I can't discuss these subject matters." Of course, he's qualified, but he was very cautious as well in that regard. Right? Not that they didn't know it. Bhaktivedanta Bharti Maharaj, he was kind of an in-between. He spent some time serving Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj as a secretary. And he also had met with our Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan and spent time with him. And when we would hear him speak, he would go into these other topics more deeply than generally his godbrothers would. Because they all knew it, but they were not all inspired to speak about it, being cautious, and rightfully so. Even Srila Gurudev himself said, he expressed the same caution and uncertainty that Krishnadas Kaviraj expressed. And he said, if I talk about these topics, what will happen? There are so many camel-like non-devotees. What's going to happen if I spread these topics? How will they take it? What will they do with it? But if I don't discuss it, it will be lost. So I have to write about it. And then he wrote, but on further thought, I realized that the camel-like non-devotees, they won't understand it anyway, and they'll neglect it. And so our Srila Gurudev was the same way. He said, only a few devotees of Srila Saraswati Prabhupada were immersed in this and would speak about these topics like I do. Bhakti Jivan Janardhan, Goswami Maharaj, Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj. See? He says, but I have to do this, because if I don't, future generations will not understand when the eligibility for greater society begins to develop and the community of devotees has grown also. If I don't write and preserve what Rupa Goswami and others have written about this, it will be lost. So we're still in a period of growth, and many devotees won't go into these topics, which is all right. And those who do go into them have to go into them carefully, right? But we have the disappearance day of our great acharyas, and they were all immersed in these topics. Just to give you an idea of that, there was a festival that was being held. I can't remember the city. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada was going to come. And I think there was going to be deity installation, some significant service to the deity, maybe installation, can't remember. And they came, Bhakti Daita Maharaj and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they came about a week before. And this is going to be a grand festival. And back then, as now, but even more back then, because you don't have all the transportation and instant access to everything, you have to plan ahead and get things made. They got there, and the temple president said, "Oh, we're in a very difficult situation." Sometime back, Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, had said to this devotee, senior devotee in the mat, to take charge of the organization and the planning for the festival. And it's only a week away, and nothing has been done. And Guru Maharaj is going to come, Prabhupada is going to come, and everything is going to be a failure. And he was so distressed. He had his own responsibilities, so many responsibilities in the mat. This other devotee didn't do anything. So, Srila Sridhar Maharaj Bhakti Daita Maharaj said, "No problem, no harm." Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, "I will take care of the preparations for the deity." And Bhakti Daita Maharaj says, "I will take care of the preparations arranging for guest accommodations and the festival itself and all the boga and all the prasad." And they did it. Huge endeavor, but they did it. And in a week, and when Saraswati Prabhupada came, everything went seamlessly, and he was very pleased. And so he expressed his pleasure, gave his blessings, and the temple president was dissatisfied. He told Bhakti Daita Maharaj, "You should tell Prabhupada that this devotee that he'd instructed did not do his service." And Bhakti Daita Maharaj was reluctant to do that. It wasn't his nature to criticize the Vaishnavas. And especially before their guru. But this temple president kept insisting for many days. And finally, on the basis that if he told him and he was chastised by Srila Prabhupada, it would be beneficial for him. So he agreed. And he informed Srila Prabhupada about that this devotee had done nothing. And then Srila Prabhupada said something very telling, which is going to affect him and manifest itself later in life. And he said, "Why are you worried about that? All this service is yours. Right? This is all your service. Why do you care who or is engaging or who is not?" He said, "In Vrindavan, all service belongs to Srimati Radhika. She is the complete personification of Krishna Seva. And if someone wants to help, she'd gladly engage them. But if no one wanted to help, she would do everything herself." So this is, as servants of Radharani, this is our mood as well. Whatever service we're given, we happily embrace and we do everything we can. And if anyone else wants to help, we'll engage them. If not, there's no loss for us. Right? So, even though not spoken about directly to so many devotees, the internal mood of whose servants are we? We're servants of Radhika. Right? We're not serving under the direction of the cowherd boys or Mother Jashoda. We're serving under the direction of Srimati Radhika. Years later, and then all service is ours. And be happy with whatever is there. In the material world, we get annoyed. "Hey, do your share, your fair share. Everyone should do their fair share. Oh, But the more we get, the happier we are. That should be our mentality. So years later, I believe in the 70s, the devotee, maybe a little earlier, the devotees wanted to get the land in Jagannath Puri the house that used to belong to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and make a temple. So they asked Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, who was the most expert, to do that. And they said, and if you can do this and get the deed and all, we will all help. We will help financially with this. And so he worked at it, and he did acquire the land, but the purchase of the land, no one could help. You know, none of them were wealthy. They all were struggling, and they had no money, so somehow or other he got together and he purchased the land. And then, when it came to the building of the temple, same thing. Same thing. And if you've ever been there, it's a really nice temple. Big, lots of facility for guests and everything. And still very well maintained. Everything is there. Natya Mandir, assembly hall for preaching in Katha, many rooms for brahmacharis and guests, kitchen, everything, right? And just down the road from the Jagannath Temple, Grand Avenue, not very far at all, where Bhaktivinoda Thakur was living. So, and there's stories about that in the construction of that temple. But, point being, after it was all completed, he made an extraordinary statement. He said, now this is completed, and my godbrothers, they invested so much confidence in me that they allowed me to take all the service in the acquiring of the land and the construction of the mott. They had such confidence in me that they allowed me to do it all. There was not a hint of criticism. His mood was one of gratitude that they had allowed him to do the whole thing. We would grumble, right? You said you were going to help. Why don't you help? And then some pride. I did it all despite, This is the attitude that one has, of the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And sometimes, and the way we should see it is that when a devotee has a service that they're able to accomplish without help from all the godbrothers and all, that's a special favor of their guru and of Krishna. They've been allowed to have that, right? And that is how we view the success of our Srila Prabhupada. His godbrothers, later on, many of them came, but the internal energy arranged that our Srila Prabhupada would be alone, would struggle for a year before anything began to manifest. Great difficulty. But by that difficulty, glorified. We were mentioning the other day about the chapter, 16th chapter, when Dharma the bull is being punished, and when asked, who did this to you, he would not say. He gave general answers. Oh, some say it's karma, some say it's this, some say it's that. Everything's happening by the will of providence. And Parikshit Maharaj understood, this is a great devotee. And Srila Prabhupada says in his purport on that section that Krishna will put his devotees into difficulty or give them trials and tribulations so that when they come out the other end, overcoming all these, by the grace of Krishna, they're glorified even more. Right? And the example of the Pandavas, everything they went through adds to their glory. So everything Bhaktivedanta Maharaj went through adds to his glory. The arguments that the godbrothers have, you should do it this way, do it that way, and then when he actually assists Srila Prabhupada in getting the land, that's glorious, right? That's a glorious thing. And Srila Prabhupada's doing all this without any direct help from his godbrothers. It adds to the power and the faith that one can develop in one's own seva, seeing what's the result if somebody completely surrenders. Like Srila Sri Ramakrishna says about Srila Prabhupada, he emptied himself of every separate desire or interest and only had the desire to fulfill the order of his Guru Maharaj. And that's why he became so empowered. And by the apparent neglect of his godbrothers, this allowed that extraordinary pastime to manifest in that way. It could have manifested in a different way. They could have helped, and that would have shown a different lesson. But Srila Prabhupada's own genius in adapting, the Krishna conscious practices to the Western mind may have been inhibited because the Gaudiya Math in India were very strict and you could say even inflexible in how to apply the conceptions of Rupa Goswami and Yukta Vairagya. Even for many years, they couldn't understand Srila Prabhupada's, not bending of the rules, but adjusting the principles according to time and place and eligibility of his audience, perfectly arranging. And he had been taught that by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, by Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, who was so knowledgeable about Western culture, by Bhakti Vinod Thakur and his writings, who laid the foundation for that kind of understanding, step by step. We covered that in Chaitanya Shikshamrita, beginning that with an explanation of the preliminary approach to bhakti through Varnashram Dharma even. Right? Very amazing. So when we reflect on the lives of our acharyas, we can remember their pastimes, but we also try to reflect on underlying lessons and meanings that can be extracted, like growing the eggplant, right? You're not eligible yet. They're in Vrindavan, right? And they're told to grow eggplant. Nobody's going to help me. Oh, this is the mercy of Radharani. She's given me this special service. It's all yours, right? Anyway, step after step. So I was going to read about Lord Shiva, the 15th verse of Brahma Samhita, but I guess we'll do that another day. But that verse will be a follow-up, because we've been hearing about the role of Mahavishnu and what he does. And then this Mahavishnu entered into every individual universe as his individual plenary portions, each of which is complete with all his mystic opulences. In other words, within each universe, Mahavishnu assumes the form of the universal soul with thousands upon thousands of heads. We read that. And then, what did he do next? This is the verse we're going to read tomorrow. That Mahavishnu created Vishnu from his left side, Prajapati from his right side, and Shambhu in the form of an effulgent linga from between his eyebrows. Okay, so we'll hear that tomorrow. All right, so Gaur Premanande, Haribol, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sri Rasikananda Prabhu ki jai, Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai, Sri Bhakti Dayata Madhav Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna. Oops, I'm going to turn that off. There we go.